Can we start with apologies, please?
So we have apologies this evening from Councillors Criswell and Terry, and an apology for being a few minutes late from Councillor Alban.
Perfect.
Oh, and Councillor Bywater as well. Sorry.
Cool. Thank you. And on to item 1, the minutes. Is everyone happy that they are a correct record of the last meeting? Yep. Aye. There we go. There we go. Thank you very much. Item number 2, members' interest. Does anyone have any interest they would like to declare? Councillor Hassel?
I'm not sure how relevant it is, but the whole of the extension of Paxton Pits Nature Reserve is actually in my ward, so I thought I ought to mention that to the committee.
Cool. Vicky? Councillor Shaw?
Thank you. I regulate the permit for call them aggregate industries. They have a waste permit, which I regulate in my day job.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wish to declare an interest? No. Cool. Item number 3, the overview and scrutiny work programme. Does Becky, would you like to take us through that quickly?
So, councillors, you have in front of you the overview and scrutiny work programme and the notice of key decisions for the next 3 months. Are there any comments or anything that you would like to add on that point at the moment? Councillor Lowe?
Thank you. I was just wondering, will we be getting any updates on the Community Chest Branch Aid Awards? How the money's being spent, etc.?
I believe there's the decisions that the grants that are awarded are published on the website, but we can ask if they can send those through to you as well.
And then it's got the place efficiency. It's date decision to be taken 16th of September, and
that's been moved through to November just to allow for full work, so that is coming. We have got a definite date for it now, so that is coming through.
Thank you.
Cool. Are there any other comments on the work programme before we talk about the Council Tax Premium Working Group? No? Cool. So members will be aware that they received an email asking for volunteers for a Council Tax Premium Working Group. Becky, do you want to give a bit more background there?
Yeah, so when the Council Tax team brought a paper through to you about 12 months ago, you requested that a meeting be set up with members of the scrutiny panel to look at that strategy and policy before it was implemented and brought through the democratic cycle. So this meeting is, as requested by this panel, to see that paper before it comes through the democratic process. You were sent some details on the background to that, and also a couple of suggested dates for the meetings in the next couple of weeks. Is there anybody, obviously bearing in mind any interest that you may have, is there anybody that would like to take part in that group?
I'll put myself... Oh, Councillor Mockball.
So it was just a question. If you do have an interest, should you not partake in that group? Okay. In that case, I won't be putting my hand up.
Yeah. I'll put myself forward for it. Conscious it's just one meeting, so if anyone is able to spare the time for that one meeting. Councillor Hassel? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll try and attend if I can, if I've got time in my diary.
Perfect, thank you. Any others? Oh, Councillor Pitt as well. But is there a need for political proportionality on that working group?
I think that would be fine. Also, I think it's based on volunteers, so I don't think there should be an issue because it's just the one meeting.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. In that case, I think the 3 of us should work. But if anyone else would like to put themselves forward, just send me an email and let me know. And that includes the members who aren't here this evening. Cool. On to item number 4, the Building Energy Strategy. Can I invite the officers and councillor to come and present the item, please?
HDC is committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2040, as set out in our climate strategy. Actions already taken include switching to renewable electricity, decarbonising key council buildings, and installing solar energy systems supported by external funding and HDC resources. These measures have reduced building-related emissions by 34.1% since 2019-2020, and with further work planned through this new building energy strategy to reach full net zero by 2040. And I'll hand over to Matt to give you a bit more detail.
Buildings and how we're going to achieve net zero by 2040. So we've been working with consultants, as you can see in the report there, with regards to setting out an outline on how we can achieve that over the next 15 years. So as we've mentioned, we have been working quite hard over the last few years to implement as many energy saving measures to both reduce cost and CO2. So we want to continue that trajectory over the next few years. Some of the key points highlighted, they are highlighted primarily on our main buildings, which is Pathfinder House, Eastfield House and the One Leisure sites, as well as linking in the countryside services buildings, sports pavilions as well. But the main focus is around the larger buildings and how we can achieve that. Also within there that you will have seen, we do need to look to try and improve the decks and the EPCs in there as well, specifically Pathfinder House, and how they're looking to evolve that and future kind of renting of space and things like that to achieve the required rating. What the strategy is doing for us is giving an overarching view on how we might achieve that. That will require further feasibility studies with each site being bespoke on how we would do that. All the sites are slightly different, all do run slightly different systems. Specifically, obviously, we've got leisure centre without gas, some gas leisure centres, some running combined heating and power, part gas, part electric. So it's how we can really effective. So to be able to do this, we will be following the council's bidding process in terms of funding on how we would like to achieve that, and then following that, we will consider each site on an independent basis on how we look to improve or make the necessary changes, or whether that is the right time to make the changes as well. There is an order within the strategy, as you've seen, on how we would achieve that, although that could be subject to change, working with different departments if there are refurbishments planned or changes to be made at that site, providing it fits within the cost envelope, then we can look to move sites around, but we want to make it achievable and cost effective at the same time. In addition to that, we will be representation from each site, doing more monitoring on the half-hourly data that we have got access to for both gas and electric, and really look to see whether it's staff training or slight amendments we can make looking further into the building management systems. So it will encompass a variety of different tools that we can use, as well as just updating plant and equipment. So that's kind of a summary on the strategy, and would invite any questions if anybody has any about that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come to Councillor Lowe first.
Thank you. I must admit, I was very pleased to hear you saying about it's going to be dependent on cost effectiveness, because that's been one of my, reading through the very good report, has been one of my concerns, you know, especially with involvement of estates and legal departments with, all the new leases and everything else, as well as the plant and equipment. I'm taking it won't be, it will only be replaced at the end of its life, so like the boilers and things.
So the plans really will be on a site-by-site basis. Obviously, we as HDC have committed to that net zero target by 2040. So depending on the time of the development, for example, on a site, we wouldn't, in an ideal world, like you say, take out equipment that has plenty of life left in it. But that would be taken on a site-by-site basis, and the benefit of that site is if we redevelop a site, I'm just using these as an example, and we can see that introducing that equipment during that redevelopment, including downtime of the site and what it may be, it might make better financial sense to actually do it at that point. So we don't have to close again and look at incorporate things like loss of income as well as only the energy savings. When it comes around to bidding for funding, there tends to be a minimum requirement. The last public sector decarbonisation scheme was boilers at least 10 years old. Currently, apart from Pathfinder House and Eastfield House, I believe all of the other larger sites are less than 10 years old, so we would probably be restricted on funding at that point. But yeah, we would cover all basis of not just the change equipment for the change in equipment, but we do also need to consider the net zero target by 2040.
Thank you. Because also with EPCs, having done quite a bit for council houses, there's different, you get extra points for different things. So for example, I know when we put in LED lights in, that seemed to get a lot more sort of points rather than windows, doors, or even the heating systems. So I think it would definitely be worthwhile looking to see where we get the most sort of points from and try and get those ones done first.
Absolutely. So the EPCs, as you'll know, need to be changed every 10, or redone, should I say, on a 10-year period. We have, I'll use Pathfinder House as an example. It's not due at the moment, but since it was last completed, we've installed 2 air source heat pumps. We've installed the LED lighting. So we've got an improved building management system. So we will be looking to have the EPC done again. And hopefully during that process, we can engage with the assessor to see also where on other sites there are potentially those wins as well.
Thank you. Going to come to Councillor Pitt next.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for this strategy. So I think there's lots of really good stuff in there, and it almost kind of leads to further thoughts and questions rather than sort of on top of what's there. I know we've talked very briefly about some of those, but haven't really got to the bottom of, but I'm happy to sort of air them sort of hopefully quite quickly here. One of the things for me kind of picks up on Councillor Lowe's point about, you know, whether something's end of life, and essentially that leads into the question of, I think, operational emissions compared to that, using the wording from the strategy, versus sort of whole life cycle net zero. My understanding is this strategy sets out a framework that can be applied to individual sites and decision-making framework. So what I would really like to see, and perhaps that's the next stage of this work, is a kind of a formula that says what's the do nothing impact. Well, we know do nothing is going to be, you know, cost impact and what are the carbon emissions, and then looking at various interventions in terms of the whole life cycle carbon impact and the whole life cycle cost impact. And that can hopefully produce some sort of formula that can guide the kind of things you're describing, which anecdotally make a lot of sense. You don't want to replace a boiler till it's the end of life. But if the boiler's terrible, then you do want to replace it before it's end of life. You know, if we can create not just a framework, but actually a formula that sets that out, I think that would be really positive. On a similar note, I'm really keen, this may be something that's sort of pet issue for me and not many others, so I'm interested to hear other committee members' view on this. But there are a range of views about the legitimacy of green energy tariffs. We currently are on a green energy tariff, which is great. We weren't a couple of years ago. However, I think for me, there's a difference between green energy that is just REGO certificates, which is kind of, I think, next to useless, really, compared to, you get companies, the middle ground is the companies that will sell green energy to one customer and then sell whatever's left to the next customer. So the company that's selling the electricity doesn't actually change what they're buying, they just package it in different ways. And then there are other companies that only deal in green energy and possibly produce their own green energy. And from my understanding, that's the gold standard. So I would like to see something, maybe if it's not in this report, in the strategy, that feeds directly off of the strategy to kind of set out the council's position. Now, members may feel that what I describe as the gold standard isn't actually thus, and we have our own view, but I do think that's a political view that the council as a whole should own. So really keen that we pick up both of those points, and welcome your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, as you've mentioned, the next step of this, after the implementation of the strategy, would be to work further, looking individually at each site with those feasibility studies, and whether the formula is exactly the same at each site. It could be different based on the type of equipment there, but that's something that we can specifically look at on the different measures that we've got in place at the moment and how we can actually achieve that, because it might be that an air source heat pump at one, ground source heat pump at another, but it then might be where we've already got that, we'll be looking at window tints, recycling heat. So there's, depending on the site, I think there could be a different formula, but totally those points need to be taken in consideration on how we're going to achieve that, and then we can obviously offer those up, and that will be part of our process in terms of bidding for that funding to be able to achieve that. So everything can be looked on a case by case basis, essentially. Hopefully that kind of answers that point. With regards to the energy, from our perspective, we are on 100% green energy tariff. We do have the REGO certificates, as I don't know if you've seen them, but to just outline that, we have it confirmed by those certificates that all of our energy is from a source of renewable, whether that be solar, wind, hydro. We are at that point, but again, if that needs to be opened up in a wider discussion, then we're happy to listen to that and look at options available to us on our next renewal, which will be next year, I believe, so October next year.
Thank you. Just on the totally green energy tariff, I know it's something that Councillor Davenport-Ray is very keen on and has been investigating sources of being able to get that. So she's on the case.
Thanks for both of those responses. That's really encouraging. I think I remember when officers renegotiated the tariff, it all moves really quickly. So I think we need to have a policy position well in advance so officers know, with absolute certainty what the council and members are hoping to achieve. And that, I think there is the distinction is a nuance, to put it politely, but it's controversial. Different views will exist. So yeah, really keen that the council sets out, through scrutiny even, would be really good to to have a clear position on that. So when we do go to, and if it's for different, if the framework we're procuring through limits our choices, then we need to consider what the implications of that might be. But yeah, thanks for both of your responses.
Going to come to Councillor Wells next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the very comprehensive report. One thing that interests me is I don't see a lot of emphasis on the insulation aspects of energy improvement, particularly thinking about this building, Pathfinder House, which is rather surprising that the original EPC is a D, which building is less than 20 years old. Are there specific measures that you think at this stage that could be brought into play to improve the insulation situation, particularly on this building? Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely, the insulation can be investigated. Obviously, as you'll know, there is a lot of glass on this building, so whether that be an additional tint or something similar, that can definitely be investigated as part of the feasibility study. The EPC on this building did surprise us. I don't know if you originally know, when it was originally built, it was BREEAM Excellent and it had an EPC rating of a B. When it was recompleted, it jumped down. So, which is what I touched on earlier. I'm keen to get that reviewed due to the fact of the changes that we've made since 2021.
Thank you. On to Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Good report. Obviously, I asked you a few questions when it was in the draft stage. I was having a little mooch through the report while you were talking and stumbled across the graphs on page, page 48, the kilowatt hour, combined kilowatt hour daily profile. I'll give you a second to catch up. What I was slightly, confused about is Pathfinder House graph. Obviously, weekdays it peaks up to about 150 kilowatts and teeters around there about 100 kilowatt mark, and Saturdays and Sundays are flat, which as I'd expect. But I was surprised that bank holidays were up there with the weekday consumption. Does anybody come in on a bank holiday? I'm just curious as to why the consumption's high on what I would imagine is a day where people aren't here. Is it because we've got old heating systems that think it's a Monday regardless whether people are in work or not? Just thought.
No, well spotted. There are a couple of reasons for that, actually. We have reviewed it and there was an error with the BMS system in terms of being able to we were putting them as being closed, but it wasn't picking it up. So we've had that reviewed since, and we are now going through and we haven't done it yet in all honesty, but we do need to add all of the exceptions for the bank holidays to make sure that we don't have that issue in the future. So we were doing it kind of a bank holiday by bank holiday basis, but yeah, it wasn't picking up that we were adding it. So hopefully you won't see that change in the future.
Yeah, I thought it was just a quick, easy win. Yeah, switch it off on a bank holiday. That's a few carbon. What's it saved?
Yeah, perfect. Going to come to Councillor Hassel and I'll come back to Councillor Lowe.
Just a very quick one. I felt that Councillor Pitt's point on the green energy is that as a committee we should perhaps make a direct recommendation to Cabinet along those lines.
So I think it's something that's definitely worth us picking up. I'm not sure a recommendation on this paper would make the most sense, but if it's something we can put as a potential work plan item to explore the feasibility of.
So I think the Cabinet's required to approve the energy strategy, so this would be a tweak to the energy strategy, I guess, to absolutely underline the green energy point that Councillor Pitt mentioned.
If you'd like to move that to a recommendation and propose have a seconded, and happy to hold a vote on it. Yeah.
Why not?
I'll come to.
Well, I was going to say, if you were, could you provide some wording for what you would see that recommendation as being, please?
Yeah.
Can I ask Councillor Pitt to do that?
I'll give it a go. You might have to tidy up my grammar. So if the report could reference the varying views on the different types of green energy available on the market and invite sort of the democratic process to evaluate and give its view on the relative merits of each one.
And I'm going to read that out in 2 seconds just for clarity once Becky's finished writing it.
I could have done a better job if I wrote it down, I suspect.
I think that there perhaps should be something and ensure that 100% green energy is used by the council. I think at the end, I think that's the objective, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll happily take that as a.
Just 2 seconds.
Councillor Hassel, could you just repeat that part that you just did at the end, just as I can make sure that we
Yeah,
add
I
that
think
in?
I think the aim of the end of it is to ensure that we actually do buy. If we're paying for 100% green energy, that's what we get is the bottom line. So to ensure that it's genuine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can read that. Yeah.
Right in there.
I should be able to write that. Right. So to check and confirm. Oh,
So it could be Matt first.
oh, sorry. Yeah, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah, no, can I just come in on that? With our current tariff, it is classed as, on the basis of our reporting, 100% green energy tariff. So the recommendation may not, in my opinion, sit within the strategy. It would be a separate point for discussion, because our REGO certificate does verify that we do have 100% renewable. Obviously, that is one point, but within the strategy, we effectively meet that by having signed up to that tariff. So whether that comes outside of the actual strategy is another question.
Yeah. I think the differentiation you're trying to draw out, Councillor Pitt, is suppliers that deal entirely with green energy. Is that the?
So I think green energy means different things to different people. And so for me, a REGO certificate is a relatively poor signifier of it being green tariff. It doesn't mean it's not, but it's not the signifier that I'd be looking for. And so I think we need to have a deeper understanding and agreement about what we mean when we refer to 100% green energy. I'm not sure whether this becomes part of this strategy or whether it becomes an annex or an appendix to this strategy that will follow at a later date. But that's what I'm hoping to achieve. And I don't know how that squares with the proposal that I produced off the cuff.
Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, it's I appreciate there is a lot of proposed wording being thrown around. So if we can just have a couple of minutes to make sure we're capturing what I believe is Councillor Hassel and Councillor Pitt's intention. Yeah, if you can read that out, please.
So perhaps, having teased a bit of information out there, perhaps a suggested recommendation could be that any future and further green energy tariffs undertaken by the council be devolved from 100% renewable energy. Would that encapture what you're trying to say, or?
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't. Shall I have a go at drafting something?
Yeah.
Rather than,
I
think it might be easier rather
yeah.
than trying
Yeah,
to
yes, that's fine, yeah.
Sorry.
Is it possible to take a 2-minute adjournment to allow some
Yes,
scribbling to be done on
absolutely.
paper and kind of in a slightly more, I think, progressible way, if that's okay to the panel? Yeah. Thank you there. Keen to get moving again as quick as we can. Councillor Pitt, I believe you have some wording which you would like to propose.
Thank you. So the proposal is, proposed that further consideration is given to the relative merits of different green energy tariffs, given that the expression 100% green energy is interpreted differently by different people, that the council takes a view on these relative merits and that this feeds into the procurement process in a timely manner.
Perfect. And is there a seconder for Councillor Pitt's proposal? Councillor Lowe? There we go. Are there any other points of debate for that? Councillor Olven?
Thank you, Chair. That actually brings in why I originally wanted to speak. And firstly, can I apologise for being late? I came in just as Councillor Pitt was speaking, and I think he makes a really valid point, because green energy does mean different things to different people. I've signed up with my energy supplier for a green tariff, but I've no idea what that means in reality. It makes me feel good that I've got a green tariff on where I live, but in reality, that does mean perhaps different things to different suppliers. It's like, I know when we first, as a council, when the new administration came in, had a debate about priorities, there was a different interpretation as to where we should put different things in different orders. So I think it is a really valid proposal, and one that I think needs to consider, not least because life moves on, technology moves on. So what is green 1 year in a 4-year council cycle, there might be something greener a couple of years later that we might want to consider.
Yeah, perfect. Any other comments on this proposal before I put it to a vote? No, in that case, all in favour? I believe that's unanimous. Cool, thank you. So moving back onto the report as a whole, I have down Councillor Lowe. Do you still want to speak on the report as a whole? Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add into, I know we've been looking at air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. They get very expensive when it's very cold weather. I know you can get dual fuel air source heat pumps that you can have an oil boiler with it as well, so that when it is really cold, the oil central heating will kick in and keep the costs down. Because obviously electricity does get very high, and I know I think it's 3 to 1 with the electricity, as in one unit produces 3, but in the winter it goes to 1 to 1. And that's on residential properties. So I would hate to think what it would be like on larger buildings.
I would have to look at the conversion rates for sure, as I'm not 100% or overly familiar with those. Where we've had air source heat pumps installed to date, here, being at Ramsey and here at Pathfinder House, is our backup is electricity, rather keeping on that green theme opposed to other fuels. But absolutely, because we are looking for that eventual net zero, our obviously preference when looking to do that would be to keep green fuels, but that's not to say that other options can't be considered during the process.
Thank you. I'm going to look to move us on in a minute, so I'm going to come to Councillor Pitt. I'm going to then come in with a final contribution, and then I'd like us to move us on to the next item.
Thank you very much. So just a point on the actual recommendations as set out. So number 2 says to delegate to the Corporate Director for Finance and Resources, section 151, in consultation with the Executive Finance, to a Councillor for Finances and Resources to make any consequential amendments to budgets and release of necessary funds to deliver the projects. I think, to me, that's not entirely clear what that impact might be, just thinking that some of these projects could be quite significant, cost attached. So can I suggest, just as a note in the minutes, that if the implications of that could be teased out in the report to Cabinet, that would be really welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, if that can be made clear in there. Right, final point or 2 points from me. One is the climate working group was able to feed into this report before it came before us this evening. How did you find the contributions, and how do you think that shaped the report that we've seen this evening?
Yeah, thank you to those who did feedback on the report. I was able to review all of the sort of feedback and questions asked. Happy to engage further if there's any further clarification on those with individuals. What it enabled me to do was look at some keywords that were used in the proposal and whether they were the right specific words used for those paragraphs. So we have been able to look at that and change a couple of those. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to pinpoint them now, but I have got them tracked on another document, so I could feed that back if that was required.
Perfect. Thank you. And then one final point from me is obviously you've currently looked at the buildings which are currently within HDC's estate and currently operated by HDC. What scope is there for any buildings that may become part of the estate in the future? So it's been announced that Sawtry Swimming Pool will be reopened and operated as part of One Leisure. Is there any scope for any kind of works to be done to explore how there could be carbon savings involved in that building or any others?
Initially, we'll use Sawtry as a specific as well, is obviously that is having a new plant room, for example, where we are looking at energy saving options, whether that be the filtration system. There's newer technology for the UK. It's been used abroad for a number of years, but ceramic filtration is one of the options that we're actually investigating further, which has the ability to reduce the energy, as well as kind of change that will be a leased building rather than an owned building. So not all the measures will be duplicated, but certainly if we purchase any further stock, then that will have to be part of the consideration is the net zero target.
Perfect. No, thank you. That's some really good reassurance there. Perfect. Thank you very much both for the presentation, and I'm assured that the additional recommendation and the points made will be passed on to Cabinet for consideration in their meeting on, I believe, the 16th? Yes. On the 16th. So thank you very much. And if we can move on to item number 5, the Paxton Pits Nature Reserve extension of leases.
Thank you. Paxton Pits Nature Reserve is set to expand in the coming years and will create one of Cambridge's largest reserves with over 600 hectares of lakes, open spaces and paths when combined with the adjoining land. This expansion supports the Council's environmental, social and community goals while offering opportunities for nature conservation and the visitor economy. We are bringing back to Council to review as a significant period of time has passed since the initial agreement was made. I'll pass over to.
Good evening, everyone. I'd just firstly like to introduce Kirsty True. She's our Parks and Open Spaces Development Officer. She's kindly helped support write the report and the summary presentation that I'll take you through very shortly. Just wanted to provide a bit of oversight about the purpose of the report, which kindly Sally has taken us through. The purpose of the report ultimately is to gain full approval from Council and ultimately Cabinet to allow delegated authority for officers to fully execute the leases for the extension following the gravel extraction. It's also, and what underpins this in section 10 is the legal feedback we've had from our 3C Legal Shared Services team, which based upon the time lapse from 2007 through to today, we felt it was best to bring that back through this political process to ensure that we got full approval, and also to allow officers, particularly myself as Head of Leisure, Health and Environment, to explore wider opportunities, strategic opportunities to develop parks and open spaces, not only with assets that we physically have at the moment, but also if there were new opportunities that prevailed in the future on how we can support that through health and wellbeing, physical activity and financial sustainability as well. So I'd like to take you through a very short presentation and then I'll take questions. Thank you. So this slide here just illustrates to everyone in the committee and gives a bit of background around the current size of the current reserve, which you can see just on the left in the middle, which is the current reserve. And it gives you a bit of background about how large it is, 78 hectares, through the extension of leases, again, which date back to 2006. Ultimately, upon the execution of the leases and taking that land on, it will increase in size by 3.5 times to about 280 hectares following the extraction of aggregate. And the extraction is due to finish in 2029. And my understanding is that we will take back land in and around the extension based upon when the gravel extraction is completed up to and including 2029. So the background, in 2006, the former Cabinet approved under Section 106 agreement that HDC could enter into the leases for the conservation land, which is effectively the extension of leases. But based upon the time lapse from that period through the economic recession, when effectively the site was mothballed, recently all three parties have undertaken negotiation to update the leases, dating back to this original Section 106, and based upon the time lapse, we're now bringing it forward through the political process for full approval so we can execute the leases in hand. The process, again, through the economic recession, it was mothballed and works were delayed, and obviously planning permission was expired. So again, aggregate industries had to submit revised proposals, and it was felt best, again, through the time lapse, and I'll keep coming back to that, again, to make sure that we got the right relevant approvals. The current position, the leases are effectively in place with all three parties. Again, I won't go through all of that in detail, but what we are confident on, based upon the evidence that you will have seen in the report under Section 10, the feedback from our shared services legal team is that they are confident and are content with the position, and subject to approval on the 16th of September by Cabinet, we will then explore the opportunity to sign and execute the leases to allow wider work and operations to be undertaken by our team, but also the Friends of Paxton Pits as well. The new leases will expire in 2087, so a lot of time here for local residents and obviously people that come and visit the site from across the world to look at the habitats, the birds, and actually just enjoy the local environment. The management of the site is undertaken by a management plan, and that management plan has been set out for a number of years, and our Parks and Open Spaces Ranger team have been and continue to do work on that site, but that has paused for a period of time, obviously until the leases are executed, and that's been the position of the Friends group as well. What you'll see within the report as well, working closely with the Friends group, and I'll provide that information later on in the presentation, is that there is savings within the Friends group of around £240,000. Around 50% of that is set aside to implement works as soon as the leases are executed, and the other 50% will be undertaken, invested within the current site as well, and also proactively, Kirsty and her team have worked very closely with the Friends group, whereby they've also funded a new apprenticeship ranger. So they will pay the salary costs of the new apprenticeship ranger, and based upon the extension of the leases, they will support and get that experience to develop and hopefully become one of our rangers in the future, which is a really positive news story. So again, the wildlife benefits, again, I won't read through that point by point, but what that does and what we will look to explore is how we can use this opportunity, to draw in more people to the site, what activities that we can implement at site. We have recently, through external consultants, implemented some work around a commercial sustainability strategy to look at all of our parks and open spaces to identify how we can draw more people into our spaces, get more people physically active, and become more financially sustainable as a service. And that information will be presented back to our teams who had a heavy involvement in the feedback and the work that the consultants have done, which is really, really positive from a staff engagement point of view. The community benefit, you can see the increase in footpaths, cycleways, and obviously new bird hides as well. So this really does allow the local residents more so a greater flexibility and access to beautiful landscapes and opportunities to be physically active. And again, you know, we've set aside money through the Friends Group to invest in bird hides and other capital investment areas as well that we feel are priorities, and that will be expanded over the next few years as well. The partner collaboration, obviously Kirsty's pictured in the picture, you know, around the award that was given by the Mineral Planning Association, which was really, really positive in March 2025. And it just shows you the close collaboration and partnership working that Kirsty and her team have done with the Friends of Paxton Pits, but more so how we will look to invest, you know, into those current existing facilities over the next 12 months around what we've put in as capital and revenue bids for that process, but also as part of the commercial sustainability strategy, how we can invest more significantly around new visitor attractions and developing, you know, facilities that people want to come in and attend and effectively enjoy as well. So that just gives you a bit of background, but again, that was Appendix 2 within which was in line with the report. So again, I won't go through that line by line. And then next steps, obviously, to come back through the political process. I put September there. That's on September the 16th for full approval at Cabinet, which will allow us then for the leases to be signed by all three parties. And again, the land in phases 1 and 2 will be transferred and the restoration works will be completed following the gravel extraction. I told you about the Ranger apprenticeship, which is really positive news. And I recommend this as head of service for full approval at Cabinet based upon the wider benefits that this provides as part of the associated report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments from members? I'm going to come to Councillor first and then Councillor Orban.
Thank you. Massively support this. You know, it's a great opportunity. I do have a couple of questions about a few bits and bobs, if I may. So obviously the site is going to be increasing from 78 to 280 hectares. That's a significant, obviously, increase in size. There's no specific mention of increasing staffing to manage that. I noticed on page 84, section 3.4, 3.5, obviously it mentions the apprentice range. I presume they'll be on site sort of all time, sorry, page 84. And it then details that the additional financial expenditure will fall within the existing budget of the team. So would that include staffing and resources from the other sites sort of to cover that area? And do they have the resources to maintain it?
So very good question. The answer is yes. So we're very confident that the management under the management plan that is in place, because it has been in place for a number of years, can be managed by the team that are currently on site. And obviously, as you quite rightly alluded to, that we've introduced an apprenticeship ranger as well. So we will obviously review that on a continuous basis. And if and when required, we will look at the resource implications. But I'm comfortable at this stage, when the leases are executed, that we will manage that site, obviously, through the management plan and the rangers on site.
It's a separate question, is it right if I...
Can I come back to you then, if that's okay?
If you could,
Cool. Councillor Orban then, and I'll come to Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit confused on the map. If we could go back to the map through you, Chair. If it would come up on the screen. It's very clear to see what the existing boundary of the reserve is, but I'm unsure as to what the boundary of the extended bit would. Is it everything that's in the different colours rather than black and white?
Yeah, so on the map that was on the screen, the black line is the current reserve, and the coloured section will be the future reserve as well.
Thank you. So just to be sure, Chair, the bit there, that we're just where the cursor is now, that is a coloured line rather than black and white. Is the non-coloured bit inside there, or just the coloured bit that's to the right of the screen?
Just the coloured to the right. The map actually identifies footpaths, access and things like that. So it's the reserve extension will be the coloured section.
That's great. Thanks for the clarification, Chair. It was. I know it's difficult with maps like this, but when I expanded it out on the iPad, it blurred and it wasn't clear. That's really useful. I've got a second question, but I don't want to jump the queue, so if I can come back in again. Thanks.
Sorry, back at the queue for you as well. There we go. I'm going to come to Councillor Hassel, and then I'll come back to Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thank you. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is in my ward, and I regularly walk Paxton Pits and the new extension and the new open footpath, which is absolutely fantastic. The Friends building, the hides there. So if you haven't been there, it's a tremendous place. So I'm a big fan. I want us to do this. I guess in the presentation, I was expecting to see more around, particularly from the legal side, as to what our liabilities are. So we're going from, we're increasing the size of the reserve massively. So there's the liabilities and also what we can do with it. So you talked about how we could expand it. Some reference, I think, to the countryside park. So presumably you can do anything within the countryside park. But in summary, what I expected to see, and I would quite like to see, is we've got this new lease agreement. What can we do with it, and what are the restrictions and what are the liabilities of that?
So, very good point. So, I alluded to the commercial sustainability strategy that we've commissioned. So, we've done that for one key reason, and it comes back to one of the purposes of the report, is to explore how we can expand, physical activity opportunities to draw in more visitors to the specific sites that we have, but also how it supports financial sustainability. So, that will encompass. So, we're underway with that piece of work, Councillor Hassel, in terms of how we can generate more opportunity for people to access the sites. But also what they will outline is, what can we do at these sites based upon the leases or the contracts that we have. So we have that information. Again, it wasn't in the presentation, but we can avail you of that information if required.
Sorry, and liabilities as well. So, because I feel that if I was in Cabinet, I'd be wanting to see what I'm actually signing up for.
I'm going to come back to Councillor Shaw now, and then I'll come to Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. I was reading various bits of the report, and it occurred to me, obviously, increasing the size of the area. Would it increase the insurance costs, the liability insurance? I mean, my basic thought process was, having a small site and then making it massive. There's no mention of financial section of the report as to the difference in insurance costs. It may be nominal, I don't know. I was just curious.
So we have picked up the insurance side of things with our insurance officer within the council to allow the Friends group and our rangers to work on site before the leases have been executed. I don't believe it's a large cost, but I haven't got that information to hand. So could I request that we obtain that and send that through to you separately?
Thank you. On to Councillor Lowe and then back to Councillor Alban.
Thank you. Just wondering, with Paxton Pits and obviously Hinchinbrook Country Park, are we going to be using those as carbon mitigation for developers for obviously all the development we've got to have in the district?
So we're currently working, my team are currently working on a proposal to see how we can set up a process as a council around bionet gain and how we can offer credits to local developers. We're working very closely with the planning team around how we can facilitate that, and we are putting something forward as part of the budgetary process for 26-27 in terms of capital investment to facilitate the setup and pilot of such scheme moving into next year, and how that can benefit and how we can utilise our physical assets to maximise and obviously set that process up and implement it as well. So hopefully that it gives you some assurance that we're on it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Cool, perfect. And then on to Councillor Alban, and I'll come to Councillor Pitt.
Thanks again, Chair. Going back to the map, it's really encouraging that there's footpath access from Diddington and then from the bottom of Sturtlow Lane and ultimately on the Ouse Valley Way. So there's lots of pedestrian access into the site, particularly for those that fancy a long walk. It's a while since I've been to the reserve, probably since it came before the panel and its previous guys some years ago. And my recollections, although a bit fuzzy, is that the car park and the access is quite narrow. So if we expand the park, are we confident and are highways confident that the access through the village, most of the motor vehicle traffic, well, the traffic has got to come through the middle of Great Paxton. Are highways happy and are we happy that the site can cope?
So a very good point. We are confident based upon the leases that we're putting forward in the expansion of site. It is something that we're exploring in terms of access because obviously there are other pockets of land that we would like to consider acquiring, such as the large tarmac area on the right hand side of the current visitor centre and the existing car park, which isn't currently our land, but we have a short-term lease for. So we will explore obviously access to the site, but based upon current numbers that are accessing the site, we're comfortable that the roadway, albeit narrow, can satisfy the demand at the moment. But we will, as part of our plans, wider strategic plans, come back and present any updates on it in the future.
And thinking and highways, are they happy with what has been proposed? This looks great, but I wouldn't want it to become a victim of its own success.
So there are discussions that we need to have in terms of highways, in terms of the accessibility. But from the feedback that we've got so far, we are confident that we can maintain access as it stands at the moment. Obviously with the extension, but that's definitely something we need to take away and explore and finalise.
Sorry, Chair, I just want to push the point about highways. I think it is very important that we get them on board and that we are sure before we commit ourselves that they're happy with what we're proposing.
Perfect. I'm going to come to Councillor Pitt and then I'll come in and then I've got Councillor Hassel on the list. After those, I think we're going to look to move on to the next item. Cool.
Thank you, Chair. So the debate's been really good. I just want to put my own view in, which is, so I'm lucky enough to live a 10 minutes drive and about 15 minutes jog from Paxton Bits. Is a shorter route when I jog. I don't jog at 20 miles an hour. But yeah, and it's one of my favourite places to visit in the whole country. So I'm absolutely delighted when I moved to St Neots that I've got this amazing resource. I think the expansion is going to be a really good news story. And I think this is a bit of a hidden gem, really. I hear a lot of talk about Hindreside Country Park. I think this is the best resource we've got in the district. And I really want the council to get behind it and celebrate it and publicise it. We've got I'll Discover Huntingdonshire page and various other ways we can get the message out about this wonderful resource. So I think we can use this as a platform for making it more used, but also I think the opportunities you describe about, if we can increase the sort of the infrastructure there to encourage more visitors to stay for longer, that would be really good. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. It's really interesting to see the journey this has been on since 2006. I was a whopping 4 years old back then, so it's interesting to see just how long this has been going on for. But no, so I think everyone's said everything about the main points. I want to just ask a bit about point number 3 in the recommendations. So the delegation or supporting the principle of engaging on other sites. And just wonder if you'd be able to say a few words about kind of what your thoughts about kind of that recommendation is and kind of how you see that working in practice and what opportunities you think there are.
So, Councillor, do you refer to 1.3 under the purpose of the report?
Yes, yeah, to support the principle of officers engaging in efforts to.
I've got one.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, so if I can. So as you'll all know, within Hingebrook Country Park, there is investment. So we hope to appoint a contractor to undertake the capital investment works there to the visitor centre in the car park, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That was part of the original strategy that was put forward a number of years ago. We are looking at a number of other ways that we can develop that site. But I alluded previously to some work that we were undertaking with some external consultants that have a lot of experience, again, in parks and open spaces for local authorities and for theme parks and such visitor attractions, to identify ways that we can explore further opportunities to increase footfall all of our parks and open spaces to obviously make those spaces more accessible so people can be more physically active, but also how we can utilise those spaces as well to become more commercially sustainable as a service. So I think under that point, to support the principal of offices, that's essentially me as head of leisure, health and environment, to develop not only our current and existing sites, but also if the opportunity prevails itself in the future of a site that we currently don't manage or own, if we can look at how we can develop a business case that can then come back through the political process and be approved for us to, hit a number one of those benchmarks, either increased physical activity, commercial revenue, or an opportunity for wider health and well-being, then that's effectively how we look at that option there that we're putting forward as a recommendation.
Perfect, and thank you for that. I'm going to come to Councillor Hassel, and then if there is nothing arising from what is said in this, we'll move on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one final thing. Members may not be aware, but there is a bridleway which is would allow you to go effectively from Diddington, which kind of means it also means Buckton, Brampton, Huntingdon, beyond, through to Little Paxton, which then means that you can get onwards to St Neots. So if that bridleway was opened, firstly, it would achieve many of the things in terms of giving people more access. But if you wanted to cycle, for example, from St Neots through to Huntingdon, it's not the most perfect route, but it's way better than it's ever been before. We've got new cycleways along the Brampton Road and so on and so forth. So I don't think that's scheduled to be opened until 2029. Is there any possibility of moving that forward?
So I think the honest answer is I don't know as soon as I sit here, but I think that's definitely something we can take away and form into our plans. And again, I can take that offline and update you separately if that's okay.
And
Yes,
thank you. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the presentation and the work that you've done on this. And we'll move on to the next item. Thank you. Hi. Councillor Howell still here for the next one as well. Yeah, perfect. So on to item number 6, the right to grow. So just before we start, I just want to highlight this. I think this is the first member kind of suggested idea that we've done, and we've been on a very long journey to get here. But I think that based on the discussion we'll be able to have this evening, and this should really pay off. And kind of it's taken a lot of hard work, but it's worth it. So over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. This report is presented to the Overview and Scrutiny panel to open the debate about whether and how the council might support a right to grow policy or similar ideas for community food projects, recognising that options must be possible within the MTFS and existing resources, and members are asked to not only think about new opportunities, but to also consider how the council's current community support tools could help to achieve the intended goals, whilst making sure any future projects are truly led by the community and ensure that the council responds to local needs and wants.
Andy, have you got anything to say?
I think that opening kind of sums it all up. It's really it's to open the debate with members now and see exactly where, if some, all up, or none of this goes any.
Yeah, perfect. So I think I can start by guiding the discussion slightly on. So I take it that members have taken the time to read the report and get very familiar with it. It's, I think, an incredibly useful and well-written resource, and I'd like to thank the officer time that's gone into that. It says in it a number of things which could be considered, and I think that members may want to flag for discussion. I think it's also their members may have other ideas which may be worth flagging. Again, it's kind of being conscious that anything kind of in the immediate term, kind of conscious of the corporate plan and the MTFS are very, very kind of concrete at the minute, but kind of anything that could be considered more going forward or anything that could work within those. Does anyone want to start the discussion? And Councillor Pitt, I'll come to first.
Thank you. Just to sort of help frame this debate possibly, I think because we've got quite a few proposals on the table and they're really well set out and it's really helpful, so thank you for doing that. I'm very conscious, having worked in sort of community organising, that like 7 good ideas rarely delivers one deliverable idea. You know, you can get kind of lost in the noise of it all. So I'm really keen that whatever comes out of this debate is something quite precise, should we say, rather than we all like all of it. I don't think that really delivers anything. So to try and tease out the things that, you know, just have some sort of priority from this discussion, I think will be really helpful. Also, just to flag up that anything that involves sort of folding into the MTFS has a natural time delay, and you know the various other political environment within political environment we find ourselves in. You know, we can't with greatest of confidence make plans for something that may be delivered in 3 years, should we say. So just to reflect on that, and also to consider that the council currently has certainly 2, possibly 3 grant schemes. We've got Community Chess, which is ongoing. We've had our Hunt's Futures grant schemes in the last 2 years, and I don't know whether it's planned for next year, but that's quite possible. But also the Community Health and Wealth Fund. All of these are available as mechanisms to deliver the things we're talking about, particularly if the projects end up being community-led. That could be a delivery mechanism to deliver on some of the objectives. So I guess just to encourage members as we go through the various proposals and any others to kind of think about how we can articulate them in a way that becomes deliverable. Thank you.
Cool, perfect. I'm going to come to Councillor Shaw first. I saw your hand, and then I've seen yours, Councillor Lowe, as well afterwards.
Thank you. Very mixed opinions about this. I think I like the principal idea, but I think it has a lot of potential pitfalls. It was quite nice that obviously we can refer to Hull City Council, who have sort of flagshipped this scheme. I did have a quick look, and they'd had 6 community projects approved, as far as I can see, within the last 2 years. I was trying to figure out whether that was good or bad. I suppose it depends on the scale of the projects, really. I just going to throw a few things out. I quite like the idea of a license. I think it means that you can't just start growing stuff willy-nilly in whatever area you choose, you sort of see fit. I have concerns about the liabilities of insurance and stuff like that. Again, nothing specific, but there's potential for fraud claims and things like that. Maps, I'd like to see more HTC used. I understand there's a cost implication of producing these maps and stuff, but I personally would like to see HTC using it more. As a councillor, it's the bane of my life when something happens and I have to try and figure out if it's on council land or not. I think that's a resource that would be great for councillors to use, even if it's not used for this purpose. But I noticed that Hull City Council used land registry information, which is freely available as a layer, so it should be fairly, if something similar to what they did is done, as far as I could see, it'd be fairly cheap and quick to implement. And I'm going to stop there and just let someone else have a go.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll come to Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. I was just wondering, obviously you've got things like the Olio app, which shares about food that is about to go off, especially for when people go on holiday and things and want to not have loads of rubbish. I think that would be good to encourage residents to utilise. I think this is going to be more of a signposting exercise for them, just to encourage people to get to know, because I know there's so much information out there. It's always difficult to know where to start, because I know also parish councils have a lot of allotment spaces. They're struggling to have the allotments taken up, so there are places out there. It's just, I think, sometimes getting all the information to the people that want it.
No, I think that those are both very useful contributions there. I've seen Councillor Alban's hand there.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Chair. I think a number of things strike me straight away. First one is congratulations to Councillor Hassel, because one of my broader political points is it's good as backbenchers that something like this has come forward, that in a council that operates an executive system, whoever's in control and whichever council it is, I think it's good that backbenchers have brought something that's progressed. The other thing is 2 other councillors involving Axter Community Fridge, Councillor Kev Goulson, Oxmoor Community Fridge, Councillor Patrick Cadawary. I think that's outside of politics, that existing community involvement. And I think back to, we just used to talk about community resilience a lot in the past. And I think COVID brought out the best and worst in people. And I think this is something, that involvement in the community and in these structures, like the community fridges, it shows community resilience, that it's not something the council has driven, but it's come from the community upwards. I share Councillor Shaw's concern, and I pick up also on Councillor Lowe's point about allotments, that there are some places where there's waiting lists and other parishes where allotments can't be filled. Then I'm not. Then, if thinking of our environmental credentials, is it right that if someone wants an allotment and they're allowed to have one outside their parish, they're then driving to grow stuff in a few miles away? It's a conundrum I think we need to work through. But going back to Councillor Shaw's point, I think I like the idea of considering licences, that people don't just spring up. I know we had this thing in the past about, was it guerrilla gardening, of people supplanting things in open spaces, not usually for eating, but to make the area look pretty. But of course there's potential pitfalls to that. So I think it's something I'm cautiously optimistic about, but the phrase, the cliche devil in the detail, springs to mind.
Perfect. Councillor Hassel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is as a result of the motion that I raised at Council some time back now. I think, firstly, on community fridges, I think I'm totally pro. I'm not saying that's not something we should do, and we shouldn't be doing one thing or another, but that solves a slightly different problem. And Councillor Lowe's view on food that is going outside of its sell-by date is another great thing, and I would say let's do that as well. And some of this some of this was all about making this, publicising to people what is actually available to them, and some of that may be our influence capability of just letting people know what they can do. But the real thing about it is that we have a huge problem. We have a massive sort of obesity problem, and a lot of that is just that we're eating these ultra-processed foods, and people have lost connection with the fact that if you put a potato in the ground, it grows into a potato plant and you can harvest your potatoes, and the same with other vegetables. And the mental well-being of just tending that potato. To be quite honest, by the time I've grown my potatoes, I can buy them cheaper in the shop than you can do that. So it's part of this is just making people more aware, and I think part of our job is publicising it. And I take the points that were made earlier on in terms of, oh well, Hull did this and only 6 people actually took this up and did it. But the amount of publicity those 6 things probably created across the city were great, and people go, yeah, I will go out and I'll plant a few seeds and I'll grow some tomato plants in my back garden and things like that. So this is kind of about just doing something rather than stifling something. Part of the reason behind this whole thing and why it's taken so long, and this is the first motion that has actually come to this committee, is that it's just too easy to stifle things, too easy to say we can't do anything. So my proposal on this is we select some things from the list and we run a pilot. And mapping HDC land is a really, really good starting point, because for many, many reasons we need to do that, not just as a right to grow. Where the culverts are, where the water flows from flooding and things like that. So I think that's absolutely vital. But just selecting a few things that we can pilot. Let's do the community fridges if we can, because that seems to be a very effective thing. But my worry about that is that in some ways it's just going to perpetuate a situation where we just store. I mean, if we have grow your own and store it in a fridge, which is one of a freezer, a community freezer, for example, one of the big things if you are growing your own is you get gluts of stuff. So having a community freezer so you can store it would be great. If we can just select some things to pilot, I think that would be fantastic.
Cool. Going to come to Councillor Lowe, and then I'm going to come in afterwards. Yeah.
I was just thinking what Councillor Hassel was saying. I think it would be a very good idea to have all the empty allotments around the district, because then, if they're near to where somebody lives, but it's not in their parish or in their village, they can maybe cycle there. There's all sorts of ways of signposting people to these availabilities, if you like.
Cool. Going to come to Councillor Pitt.
Thank you. So I think part of the problem for me is there's loads of great ideas in here, and it's kind of how do we pick something, or a smaller number to move forward on. I thought the foraging thing about the falling fruit website was really interesting. I was sorry to see there's nothing in my town in St Neots listed there, but that's obviously down to people of St Neots to do that, and we don't need the council to do much more than maybe a social media post to encourage it. So there's lots of things that could happen, and actually members can get on with it with their local communities. I just wanted to share a bit of a story about a community garden in London called Culpeper Community Garden. So my mum was heavily involved in this when I was a teenager, and being a teenager I wasn't particularly interested in community gardens, but I do remember it really vividly as being, it was essentially a set of allotments, doing what people normally do in allotments, but around there was a pond, there was a lawn, there was a sort of community building effectively that people could hire out. I think my mum had one of her significant birthdays there. She even booked a terrible indie band to play I was playing guitar in. Anyway, so it was a real community resource beyond an allotment, and I think that created a community that you wouldn't necessarily get in a traditional allotment. And it had a huge enduring value, and I've just found their website, and it looks amazing still. So I wonder whether, I know God Manchester's got a community nursery, I think. I'm sure there are examples of this in the district and beyond, but whether there's a bit of kind of almost like visioneering, which is almost definitely isn't a word, but if the council kind of set out something to actually, to get people excited about, here's an opportunity. And I think the mapping exercise is worthy, but I'm not sure if it is worthwhile, because what we might end up with is, here's 50 bits of land that are maybe going to be useful. I kind of would encourage the council to say, actually, let's find a piece of land and talk to the local town or parish council, try and pilot it in a more proactive way. It doesn't mean that the district council has to do, I'm going to say, much of the work. It might be something that the town or parish council picks up, or even a community group might want to pick up, or a new group might come about as a result of it. But I think to do something quite aspirational is the thing that's going to kickstart some real change. I think the risk otherwise, we have just lots of piecemeal things that don't really amount to a whole.
I'll let you come in, Councillor Hassel, and I'll come in with my point.
Yeah, I mean, just having sat on the community chest, and I feel that everything is sort of pigeonholed. Everything is separate, and what we need as a council is this holistic view to take all the things. Like, for example, Councillor's suggestion there of actually just, if we had across the district all the empty allotments, that would be a fantastic resource. If we did use the mapping and say, well, actually, we know from the same as Community Chest, we know where the areas where there is, where we have some challenges, and there was a piece of HDC land, and we could put some money into it to create an allotment shed, or a focal point, even a community greenhouse, for example. Then it's not about, it's just about the imagination and putting all the bits of the jigsaw together than spending huge amounts of money. So I'll stop there, because I know that Councillor Hunt was going to make a point, but I think it's going to this idea of selecting something for a pilot, I think would be really good.
Yeah, so I want to come in because of in the vast amounts of policy, I'm usually a big believer in the phrase of build it and they will come. The problem, I think, is with my experience working with volunteers and things that need to be volunteer-led, that is often not usually the case. And that's why I approach a lot of what's in here, I think, with enthusiasm, but with a lot of caution. I think, in my experience in certainly my patch, it's kind of, we have a lot of very driven people in Huntingdon East, and I'm sure many people in their wards have the same. What usually works best in getting things done is, rather than something being a centralized pilot or something like that, when the barriers for people who want to act, when those barriers are removed. And when we usually signpost to things at work, I think Councillor Hassel, you said a minute ago about things being pigeonholed. When we can present how to kind of navigate these things a bit more clearly, that kind of stuff often can be resolved, I think, and because it's driven by the community, it often makes its way through there. So I know we're talking about kind of the idea of a pilot's being thrown around. It's kind of, I think that would be sensible. I think that kind of pilot would need to be, I think, driven by the community though. And I think there would be potentially, I think, scope for ward members to possibly drive that in their areas. One thing I was going to suggest is, I spoke about kind of trying to tie things together there. It's pointed, I think, quite well when you look through the different bits of section 4 in this report, kind of the journey from potentially an idea to the end. You can kind of see it in there, okay, we'll acquire the land through the land disposals policy, all kind of this and that, kind of, you can see a rough end-to-end journey, but if I'm a volunteer, it's kind of, okay, how do I do that? I think if we as a council can potentially, I don't think it needs to be much, maybe even just a page on the website of kind of here's how you get from end to end on this. Are you considering setting up a community garden? Okay, well, firstly, make sure it's HDC land or whose land it is. Here's how you can apply for a land disposal. Here's potentially the other things you need. Here's the potential funding you could get if you apply for community chest or health and well building fund. I think something like that would be, I think, quite an easy action to achieve. I think that could then lead into a potential pilot that a member would like to drive through their ward. If anyone has an idea of a patch inside their ward and a community group that might want to get involved in that, or potentially even, I don't know, take a lead on themselves, I think that would then lead the way for that. It's just, I'm always suspicious, and it's when something is driven by quite a corporate entity in situations like this, it lasts brilliantly until the council goes and finds its next new shiny thing and goes plays with that toy, and then what happens to the old one? So I think that's a way of taking it forward, although I'm obviously very open to panel's thoughts. I can see Councillor Howe wants to come in, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, I was just going to say I totally agree with you, having led volunteer groups and things like that. Yeah, if you give them how to do it, a toolkit, which is what I'd written down here, and then you said it yourself, yeah, you're more likely to get people to do something than just go, we want you to do this. And they'll go, where's the money? So.
Perfect. Yeah. Councillor Hassel, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I just agree with that. I think that ultimately this has to be community led. You can see the fantastic things like the Friends of Paxton Pits have actually done, but I think that the toolkit they need to know what's possible, and at the moment they don't know what's possible. Yeah, they don't know that they can create a community garden if they wanted to, etc.
Councillor Pitt.
So I think possibly I agree with everything that's been said, the last three contributions. I think rather than a page on our website, which risks never being clicked on, I think Support Cambridgeshire, which is the new name for Hunts Forum, might be a better place to park this information for us to, someone at HTC to go and have a conversation with them just to say, we like this idea, we'd like to hear, from community groups or whoever it might be. And there's a appetite to develop this from HTC. But I think Support Cambridge are in a better place to know the local communities. And similarly, ward members, I think, are going to play a key role here to kind of getting something up and running. But I think, to kind of just get the message out, that's my suggestion.
Cool. Are there any other thoughts before on the area, or should I try and draw this to some kind of, I think, sensible summary? Okay, cool. So conscious that there's obviously been lots of ideas and views thrown around, I think one of the best outputs of this would be to compile some notes to be passed on to Councillor Howell as one relevant portfolio holder, and then Councillor Kerr as the other one there, that can potentially lead to either something we could possibly get a further update on, or a further discussion on, or further consideration could be given to by Cabinet. This is based on the scribbles I've been able to do while chairing the meeting here, but I think broadly, if we would be able to pass on maybe a one-page summary of the discussion and then call out as the headline notes, I think that the overview and scrutiny panel kind of presented various thoughts. However, they believe that mapping land of which HDC owns and may be appropriate for the right to grow may be a worthwhile consideration. Signposting opportunities for allotment across the district may be a worthwhile opportunity where practical. I'm aware that the report does drill in a bit into practicality challenges there, but there may be areas which town and parish councils may be able to drive more of the legwork. The Everyone Scrutiny Panel believes it may be appropriate for a toolkit showing an end-to-end journey from kind of community idea through to output could either be produced for the HDC website or to sit with Support Cambridgeshire or another relevant organisation. I think those are three things that could be quite deliverable. I think they're three things that are worthwhile for further discussion, and I'd be willing to be part of that conversation as chair and kind of act as a bit of a channel there. And then probably last one for the summary, but I think a more call to action for ward members of, if you're aware of something like this that could act well as almost like the first go or a trial, or if you're willing to push this forward in your wards, I would highly encourage you to and try and map that journey. Is the panel happy, or are there any disagreements? Councillor Orban?
Just picking up on Councillor Pitt's point of the successor group to Hunt's Forum, I think that should be included and approached, because I think that really pushes the whole idea of ground up.
I've got Support Cambridgeshire. Support Cambridgeshire, the new name for Hunt's Forum. That's correct. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I still call them Hunt's Forum normally, so that's why I got caught slightly off guard there. But yeah, are there any objections to that summary being the summary of this discussion? No? Perfect. Well, in that case, is there anything, Andy or Councillor Howe, you'd like to say to finish off? No, in that case, thank you very much for the work that was done on this. I hope that this discussion has been useful and is a conversation we could pick back up going forward. But thank you very much. And that draws us to the end of this meeting. So thank you very much.